Ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, before we start our discussion, let's pay our deepest condolences to the Egyptian community and the victims' families. We're going to be tonight talking about the tragic terrorist attack that took place at St. Peter's Church in Abbasiyah, adjacent to the Coptic Cathedral here in Cairo. And joining us here in the studio to shed more light on some of the details we've gathered so far about the terrorist attack is Dr. محمد الحليم, the political analyst. We're also joined by Dr. Ahmed Osama Abu Duma, member of the Global Board of Trustees of the United Religious Initiative. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Before we start our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, let's check out this report regarding some of the culprits that were arrested in relation to the terrorist attack, and we'll be right back to talk about it in full details.
The Interior Ministry announced that those involved in Sunday's St. Peter's Chapel attack were arrested. In a statement, the Interior Ministry said that an investigative team had checked the crime scene and unveiled the criminal elements responsible for the attack. It said the cell's hideout in El Zaytoun district in Cairo had been raided and that an explosive belt had been found in addition to other materials used in making bombs. Other members of the cell were arrested, including Rami Muhammad and Muhammad Hamdi, Muhsin Mustafa, the brother of the runaway leader Muhab and Ola Hassin. The statement said that Muhab Mustafa Sayyid Qasim had adopted extremist thoughts under Ansar Beit al-Maqdis terrorist group. In 2015, he traveled to Qatar, where he was united with members of the terrorist Brotherhood group and planned for terrorist attacks in Egypt. Qasim received financial and logistical support to train other elements in northern Sinai. On the 5th of December, the so-called Egypt Revolutionary Council issued a statement on attacking Copts in Egypt because of their support to the state. Upon the assignment, Qasim recruited a number of elements to help him in carrying out the attacks. The statement revealed that the 22-year-old Mahmoud Shafi, the suicide bomber who tackled the church attack, had been arrested in 2014 in a protest held by the Brotherhood terrorist group while possessing a machine gun. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi announced on Monday that the terrorist attack in St. Peter Church had been carried out by Mahmoud Shafi Mustafa, who wore an explosive belt. He noted that 3 men and a woman were arrested in connection to the attack while search continued for others. Sisi said the attack came as a move from desperate people after many failed attempts to undermine the country. The statements were made during a state funeral held by the martyrs. President Sisi and Pope Tawadros II, the Pope of Alexandria and the Patriarch of the Holy Apostolic See, led the state funeral held for the martyrs of the terrorist attack. The funeral was also attended by the Prime Minister as well as a number of ministers and families of the victims. President Sisi announced a 3-day of mourning following the brutal explosion that killed at least 25 innocent civilians and injured nearly 50 others while performing prayers at the chapel next to Cairo's Coptic Orthodox Cathedral.
قدر كنيستنا المصرية أن تقدم شهداء.
والمصاب ده مش مصابكم انتوا بس، ده مصابنا كلنا، احنا حاجة واحدة. دي ضربة إحباط.
نتألم كثيرا لهذا الشر الذي تخلى عن كل إنسانية. الذي يفعل هذا لا ينتمي لمصر على الإطلاق حتى وإن كان على أرضها.
لازم هننتصر لأن احنا أهل خير مش أهل شر.
لا تحسب أنك حققت شيئا.
مش هنسيب طارنا حتى بعد اللي قبضنا عليهم.
يحفظ الله وحدتنا الوطنية على أرض مصر.
عزاء الشعب مصر كله. الضربة دي وجعتنا، لكن أبدا أبدا الضربة دي عمرها ما هتكسرنا.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, shedding more light on this heinous crime. Dr. Al-Halim, first of all, this is not the first time the Egyptian society goes through such a terrorist attack. This really resembles very much the terrorist attack that took place at the Two Saints Church in Alexandria in 2011 on New Year's Eve. How do you read this tragedy? How do you feel the Egyptian society should read this tragedy?
Right. Well, before I begin my talk actually with you, and my own commentary on the status quo, let me, represent my deep sadness and great consolation for all the Egyptians, for all the Egyptian individuals, for the Christians, for the Muslims. As much as our political leadership did say a couple of minutes ago that we are to be taken as one organic whole, actually, Muslims and Christians. And no matter how devastating the act would seem to be at the very beginning, no matter how dismantling and very much bloodshedding and how much atrocities, the whole tragic situation of the scattered remnants, actually, of our Christian brothers at St. Peter's Church, actually, and the devastating act and the sentimental influence that would leave its deep impact on almost every single individual Egyptian, I would say Egyptian, not Muslim or even Christian, because as I've just mentioned, we are just one unity to be taken as one organic whole. The fact that I would like to draw the attention of almost all the people here, there and everywhere, that no matter what would seem to be quite devastating on the face of it, no matter how dismantling the situation may seem to be, no matter how tragic the instantaneous deaths of our own religious and very much dear Christian brothers maybe, that would not detract us from the words of our own unified goal at the end of the day. Our own unified sense of solidarity, of equality, of unity as much as of becoming one organic whole, as I've just said. The fact that the situation is very much dismantling and very much tragic, but the selection of the situation and the selection of the day itself, that is the birthday of our own Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, actually, is quite devastating. It's quite, coming on an international level, on an international agenda, actually. The terrorists are very much thinking the right way how to devastate the infrastructure of the Egyptian society, and particularly, the vast popularity on the part of our own political leadership by the Christians, side by side with Muslims, towards assisting and solidifying the situation of our own political leadership of President Sisi. The fact that they are choosing, I wouldn't say the right time, I would say a very crucial time, actually, at this particular stage of the sort of the unification between the Christians at one hand, actually, and the Muslims on the other, and their own sense of belonging to President Sisi, actually. But I think that his own talk, his own speech, would seem to be quite very much unifying all the Egyptians at one single unified purpose. No matter how devastating, as I much have said at the very beginning, the situation is, and maybe, I think it would in anyhow and somehow or another would weaken our own trust in our own political leadership and our own trust in our own solidarity and our own sense of belonging to each other. Of course, that comes as part and parcel of the hidden agenda of the Muslim Brotherhood's intentions, and very much scandalous affairs, and very much, tragic and instantaneous attempts to put an end, actually, for the sense of solidarity for the Egyptian state. But in the meantime, we'd have to be very much careful that, being the third devastating act in less than fortnight, I would say.
Yes.
And first instance in El Haram, and then followed by the second, and it is supposed to be the third, and perhaps the most, sinister and the most tragic, insofar as it is very much adjacent to the residence and to the place of the Pope, the religious symbol of almost all the Christians, and the religious identity as much as the embodiment of peace and solidarity among all the other nation, actually, and the Arab nation. I'd like to say, that sort of attempt, that sort of false attempt to put an end for our own solidarity would come to no avail at the end of the day. It seems to be, on the face of it, actually very much tragic, and it would leave, as I've just said, very much deep impact on almost our own, sentimental feelings and our own passionate hearts. But in the meantime, I think that they are martyrs in the real sense of the word. During the act of the congregational parishioners, during the act of praying, during the act of their own sincere moments where they are very much near to God, they are to be assassinated. And as such, this is the hand of the violence that should be rejected and should be denied almost here, there, and everywhere.
Yes.
And I wouldn't actually, emancipate that sort of situation from the existence as much as our own political leadership say that the young man actually, Mahmoud Shafiq, who had been arrested at one instance a couple of years ago, on the grounding of carrying guns, on the grounding of assassinating political figures, so has got a criminal history in the real sense of the word. And as such, that would give us an interest how to deal with all these criminals, not to set them free as much as it would seem to be in the first instance.
We're going to be talking about these culprits and the arrest that took place 2 years ago in details more later on. Now, Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Al-Halim actually mentioned the significance of the timing. It was last Sunday. Sunday is the usual day of prayer for all the Christians. It also coincides with marking the birth of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Also, we are approaching the Christmas celebrations and New Year's as well. President Assisi called it a blow that really symbolizes a lot of frustration. What is the significance of actually choosing this pretty critical time, and how much of an effect does it have on the Egyptian society?
First of all, this very organized crime, well-organized crime, and a special time to work on it. It is like a war of attrition against stability and development. They were undermining the stability of Egypt. We find here that started a lot of voices now to talk as Christians or as Muslims. And the wise and the real people in Egypt is talking all the same language, that we have to be in more of solidarity in this very critical time for Egypt, present and affected the future. Surely they want it to start firing the relationship between the Egyptians, dividing them regarding religions, and the next step to be like a religious war. So to lose the personality of Egypt, to lose Egypt itself and its unique civilizations and unique kind of tolerance and peace between the Egyptians themselves. So these criminals, they are getting benefits from these kind of crimes, and it will not be the last one. We predicted that maybe they will do more, because their plan is really open, it's not hidden. They are working on destroying and undermining the stability and development of Egypt. What's needed is the government must make a big efforts engaging with the Egyptian people, the public themselves, to protect the country from these terrorists and these kinds of attacks. The religious formal organizations must be careful, very careful, for any kind of declarations or fatwa or these kind of wrong messages delivered as Islam said blah blah blah. and the combination now between the religion and terrorism. I just arrived to Egypt on Saturday from an international conference and regional conference titled Religiophobia. And I was talking about terrorism, and we are predicting something could be happening in our countries, in the district, everywhere. Now we are facing a global terrorism.
Yes.
Everywhere. So we are in call now. We have to call the international community to have the international coalition for peace building and fighting terrorism.
Yes.
It needs diplomatic efforts, it needs public diplomacy efforts, it needs a lot of plans to be done, and nothing is impossible. We will not be broken we will not be broken if we decided to still alive, to still fighting for our safety and country.
Definitely.
So it needs a lot of things. It needs to fight poverty. It needs a lot of education for people.
Yes.
We have economy. We have to work on these very important things, because the education, the media, the economy are playing a very important role, and for sure the religious messages from these groups who are using the history and in different stories and convincing people that they will kill innocent human beings and they will gain the blessing of God. So this brainwashing is very dangerous.
Yes.
So it needs a lot of efforts. We need to work with plans, with actions, with engagement between the civil society, the government, and to stay working on keeping our country, Egypt.
Yes.
Egypt is different. Egypt has no extremist ideas. It's not from here. It's adopted from other countries, but with a lot of funds working with religious for a political interests.
Yes, definitely. Dr. Al-Halim, you mentioned now this terrorist attack is not the first one that took place quite recently. There was previous attacks right before them, actually, and one that included a lot of police officers and personnel who were killed at a checkpoint. Now, if such an incident took place a few days before the terrorist attack and the bombing at St. Peter's Church, why were we not ready? Why were we not really cautious enough or prepared enough to protect such important institutions such as churches and mosques and government installations and buildings? Why are we not really, why were we not prepared for any attack, especially that we are approaching a lot of holiday seasons and festive seasons, and this bombing, this tragedy actually that involved the death of many police personnel didn't really prepare us. Why were we not ready?
All right. Two major distinctive issues, actually, that I can really talk about. The first, which is very much important, the fact that, you know, I mean, President Sisi said in more than one respect, in more than one conference, in more than one meeting, actually, that terrorism has no religion, has no land, has no ethics, has no value, has no certain country, actually. That would give us, actually, the impression that these terrorist attacks and terrorist actions, actually, on the part of those merciless figures, would seem to be quite very much blind and would commit their own crimes. As such, you know, I mean, without differentiation, without, you know, I mean, differentiating the poor from the rich, the Muslim from the Christian, the civilian from the military figure, actually. And as such, it would give us the impression that, you know, I mean, more than one respect, the man was very much cautious, very much aware, very much predicting, and very much notifying and drawing the attention of the public community, of the international community, of how dire and of how serious the situation is. That's why he has got what you might call a farsightedness, actually. He's quite predicting all these things. But the thing is, And even almost those civilized countries, in the United States of America, in France, in Nice, in Italy, in Rome, in Spain, actually, in all these, advanced, countries, I would say that terrorist actions might occur, despite the fact that safety and security in almost all these countries would seem to be quite approaching the 100% degree. But you can really say at the end of the day, this is a role of safety and security that you cannot protect, that you cannot safeguard almost any sort of installment or any sort of establishment or any sort of political figures or political leaders with the degree of 100%. That seems to be quite far-fetched, actually, because terrorism is very much internal as much as external. They would use almost every possible means at their own disposal of utilizing the minds, of using the money, of the monetary system, of brainwashing the minds of youngsters actually in schools, of trying to change what you might call the minds and the way of thinking and the thought of almost all the people, even the Muslims, even among the Christians. They would have their own way, every now and again, of interfering, using their own monetary systems, harping on what you might call those weak souls, actually. That's why I would like to draw the attention to one main fundamental fact here, which is we would have to be very much aware of draining, the thought and the source of the monetary system of international group, of this worldwide group of Muslim Brotherhood. They are providing the people every now and again with luxurious amount of money, actually, vast amount of money here, there and everywhere, changing their own political creeds and their own identities and their own personalities, utilizing them as puppets, as marionettes at the hands of all these people, actually, to try to put an end, to try to assassinate what you might call a political leader, a policeman. But the thing what seems to be quite very much sentimental, very much emotional, very much instantaneous, tragic, which is putting an end for those lives of people that are very much innocent, that would seem to be quite far away from any diplomatic affairs, from the world of politics. They're just, praying within a church, doing their own psalms and psalmodies, singing, the praising of God, and, praying for almost all the humanity to be safe.
Yes.
To be very much secure.
What about this church? I mean, this church is quite adjacent to the cathedral in Cairo, which is a very critical institution and a very critical building that was the scene of a lot of developments that took place over the past few years, and it is virtually separated by one wall. Shouldn't we have expected that there would be a little bit more attention security-wise to such a church, at least for its geographical location right next to the cathedral, right after a terrorist attack that took place a few days
absolutely,
ago?
You're absolutely right. But I think that it's a bit earlier, actually, to talk about, because, procedures and the measures actually are to be taken until the very moment. But the CCTV camera, the detector camera, actually, would detect the fact that there is one of the policemen was an absolute sense of fight and struggle with the Pama, you understand? So, that sort of thing would give us the impression that there was an attempt on the part of the policeman, actually, to deter him, actually, to make him a bit away from the cathedral as much as from the church. So that seems to be quite, a bit earlier to give our own final verdict on the immunity, on the safety and the security. But I think, actually, as I've told you at the very beginning, that seems to be quite impossible, actually. If you safeguard, if you try to, avoid the sudden menace and the approach of danger of all these terrorist acts and actions, actually, of all those terrorists, it seems to be quite impossible, actually, to try to make the whole geographical place immune 100% from the threatening voice of all these terrorist attacks and all those terrorist actions. But I think this is just one link in the chain. I think that this is not the first and it's not going to be the last. That's why, our own political leadership seems to be quite very much aware of how dangerous the situation is and how predicting, the future. That's why the immunity and safety and security would seem to reach to the highest maximized level in the near future, immediately during the celebration of the Christmas and immediately after that sort of celebration. So hopefully that seems to be and will be the last. But we would have to be very much cautious and very much aware of what would seem to be actually in future.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Ahmed, you've mentioned a lot of things that need to be done to actually counter this ugly phenomena. But the presidency and the leadership and a lot of the concerned ministries have been talking about redefining or reinventing the religious dialogue, which is a very good initiative and it's quite important, but that will deal with the coming generations. What about the minds that are already filled with extremist ideas right now? How are we going to deal with it? How soon can we actually work on eradicating these extremist thoughts and ideologies? Because redefining the religious dialogue will take some time, but the danger is clear and it's present right now. How are we going to deal with it?
Surely it is a very challenging environment, but it is possible to work now, and we have initiatives already we can start with, but it needs more efforts from the government to allow people to participate, to save their country. How? By working together. The situation here is these generations, they didn't read. And we have more than 40% of the public literacy.
Yes.
And we have a lot of people graduated, but they didn't even read. So they are just listening to words or on the internet, just get information without knowing what's the reference and the background of these things. So what's needed is working together. Get the people together in action. I'm talking on the ground now. It's not just words or lecture to read, to deliver, but it needs to work together. And we have programs for TOT with the teachers themselves in the schools, and bring intellectuals who are not, surely must be from the religious association, but they have mind and they have things to say in the right direction, to guide the people for love. Love, if you are a believer in God, you must have love. No love, as Prophet said, and with Christianity, Allah, Mahabba, Allah.
God is love.
Is love.
The Holy Bible, yeah.
So, by all means, we have to enliven the humanity in people. Don't be just materialistic. Don't judge on the people and put yourself on behalf of God as if you are His agent on the ground to put who you want in heaven and others to hell. No, life is not like that. Religions is not this way, totally.
Yes, definitely.
All religions, rules is working for the humanity, for having better behaviors. We do mistakes and God forgive people. So, and He ordered us in Quran to forgive people regarding you are seeking Him to forgive you. So forgiveness, not saying that you have to kill. If you kill one person, as if you killed all people. This is in Quran. How come these terrorists having their education? It's not Egypt. Egypt is not this.
Yes, definitely.
This education and this wrong of beliefs and faults will destroy the world.
Yes.
They are doing this with all of their confidence that they will get the benefits from God for killing people.
Yes.
Come on. It's not like that. Life is not like that. The history is not like that. But which point of view these people are seeing the history? It's very important.
Yes.
You will see the positive things or you will look to the negative things. This will define which way you will gonna go.
Yes.
To revenge or to forgive or to understand and learn and go on and move on as a human being. This is the truth. We all, if God wants everybody to be one nation, one nationality, one color, one religion, He can create the world this way from the early beginning. But this is the diversity, the luxury of diversity, and how now in Egypt and everywhere we can collect all of these broken pieces to use it as a mosaic
for the better good.
For the better good, as Egypt was in the past, and it will be in the future if we will take it seriously and work on it.
Yes.
We can do. No one can expect once a day that peace will gonna happen between even the Europeans themselves, or even with, as Mandela's example, we have to
unite. Yes, definitely.
We have no choice. We have no choice.
Well, Dr. Abdul-Halim, now we've been used to hearing and witnessing a lot of the operations undertaken by the security personnel and the armed forces combating terrorism within the Sinai Peninsula, northern Sinai to be specific. And over the past couple of years, the security and safety level actually developed and increased in Egypt. However, over the past week or so, things have hit right close to home, the heart of the nation, the capital, Cairo. So it's not just in Sinai right now, it's still very much alive in Cairo. Should we expect more of these things within the capital? Should we expect more of these tragic attacks taking place all over the country? How much do you feel this has been planned for before it took place? Because obviously it was well planned, it was organized, and it took place, no obstacles.
Right. As you might have said, I mean, rightly said and rightly done. The fact that it's a well-organized chain of crimes, very much intended on the part of the, the international group. And in the meantime, it comes as just part of the link of the chain. It's just one step of the large number of attempts on the part of all those terrorists, actually, to try to demolish, the infrastructure of the Egyptian land and to put, a sort of division, a sort of struggling, separating ties between the Muslims and the Christians. And at one instance, they are trying actually to, counterfeit the shortage of the sugar, and then the oil, then some food and some beverage and that sort of thing. They are trying with all possible means actually to try to separate and alienate the Egyptians from each other. And that in the first instance. And in the second instance, they're trying to separate the Egyptian people and the Egyptian individuals from their own political leadership. But I think, they would come to an absolute sense of fiasco at the end of the day. Anyhow, when at discovering, given the fact that that sort of thing would seem to be quite impossible for the Egyptian solidarity, now then that they're trying to put borderlines between, the Muslims and the Christians, and trying to devastate a large number of marches, as much as it has been precipitated in that way. But I would say that this would not seem to be the last link of the chain, not the last attempt. That's why, the political leadership and, and the armed forces and the police would use almost every suitable chance in the near future to try to detect, to forbid, and to avoid any sort of future terrorist attack in any conceivable respect. I think that in the last speech by our President Fattah Sisi is very much aware of how dire the situation is, but in the meantime he gives us the impression that you are very much united, and very much united, very much unified, very much, passing through a spiritual song of happiness, a spiritual song of love, kindness, a spiritual song of immunity, actually. The funeral, as it was, a funeral procession, I would say, as it was to be represented on the TV, actually would give us, all of us, the impression that we are brothers at the end of the day. We're always fighting terrorism, but in the meantime, we'd have to be very much careful of what would happen in the near future. That's why means of safety and security are very much maximized to a greater extent. Detectors and sensors are being provided for almost every single individual church, as much as cathedral, no matter how distant it may be, no matter how minute and very much small it may appear to be. And as such, the role being played by the individuals and the citizens seems to be quite very much important at this particular and crucial stage. Each single individual human being in Egypt that is beloving this land, loving this sort of land, very much trusting this sort of land, would have to be very much cautious, very much aware, very much, notifying and drawing the attention of those distinctive authorities of any suspect, of any sort of suspicion that might come to his own mind, that might come to her own mind. It's a role that is to be distributed and that is to be played by almost all of us, actually. Not only the armed forces, not only the police and safety and security, not only those distinctive authorities, actually. Almost each individual one of us is very much responsible for not only detecting the sort of the crime, but putting an end for it, either by notifying and drawing the attention of all those, distinct authority, actually, of one suspect of one sort of thing. So, all of us, we seem to be quite, within the self-same dash, within the self-same boat. And each single individual human being on this land may be very much responsible, actually, for the safety and security, not only of his own family members, but almost, each single individual of the whole community of the Egyptian country.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this tragedy really hit the heart of every Egyptian citizen, and the state really mourned the victims of the St. Peter's Church bombing. For 3 days, also held a state funeral. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Several states and world organizations have condemned the church bombing in Cairo and offered condolences to Egypt through official statements, either from home or via their embassies in Cairo. A number of countries, including Russia, US, Britain, France, Germany, Sudan, Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, Kuwait, Oman, Iran, Turkey, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, the Palestinian National Authority, and Israel condemned the bomb attack, in addition to the Arab League, the GCC, the European Union, and the United Nations. Moroccan King محمد VI sent a condolence message to President Sisi. President of the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko also sent a similar message expressing support to Egypt in the fight against terrorism. President Sisi also received a phone call from Greek Prime Minister in which he expressed condolences to the families of the victims, reiterating the country's full support to Egypt. For his part, Sisi expressed appreciation to the Prime Minister and those leaders and hope for boosting cooperation between Egypt and those countries in all fields. Meanwhile, Sudan expressed sincere condolences to Egypt and the families of the victims. It reiterated full solidarity and support for Egypt's efforts to preserve security and safety of its citizens in the face of the terrorist and criminal acts. Saudi Arabia also condemned in the strongest words the terrorist bombings and said such cowardly act is deplorable by Islam and all religions, as it contravenes the human values and principles and international conventions, while offering condolences to the families of the victims as well as to the Egyptian government and people. And Lebanese Prime Minister designate Saad al-Hariri condemned the attack, saying terrorism has no religion and does not differentiate between a Christian or a Muslim, adding that terrorists want to kill as many as people as possible, in addition to destroying and dismantling their societies. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas condemned the attack in a letter to President Sisi, expressing deep grief and condolences to the victims of the bombing. For its part, the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation strongly condemned the attack, with its Secretary General conveying his condolences to the families of the victims and the people of Egypt.
قدر كنيستنا المصرية أن تقدم شهداء.
والمصاب ده مش مصابكم انتوا بس، ده مصابنا كلنا، احنا حاجة واحدة. دي ضربة إحباط.
نتألم كثيرا لهذا الشر الذي تخلى عن كل إنسانية. الذي يفعل هذا لا ينتمي لمصر على الإطلاق حتى وإن كان على أرضها.
لازم هننتصر لأن احنا أهل خير مش أهل شر.
لا تحسب أنك حققت شيئا.
مش هنسيب طارنا حتى بعد اللي قبضنا عليهم.
يحفظ الله وحدتنا الوطنية على أرض مصر.
أعزائي الشعب مصر كله، الضربة دي وجعتنا، لكن أبدا أبدا الضربة دي عمرها ما هتكسرنا.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Ahmed, now, it is a heinous crime. A lot of talk has been said about, well, how can we actually stop that from happening again? First of all, do you think that there is enough security on all the churches and mosques and the vital buildings and installations that really represent not just the government but the identity of the Egyptian society?
This point we have to look to have a look on it, but in a more wider perspective. Because what's happening now, or even from years ago, it's till now, it's just we can count them, but it needs more security regulations in Egypt, and we have to work on public campaign for humanitarian security. The people must be aware of the dangerous and the terrorism around them everywhere. So it needs the Egyptians themselves, the people must be aware and looking what's going around, not a paranoia to the people who feel insecurity, no, but just taking care. And it's very important. And I think the security and the intelligence and the military are doing their best, and they can do more, and they will do more to provide people from these crimes. What's needed is people must work together. We have to get out of depression. Mr. President talked about it. We have to get out of this depression in our society and let the people feel alive again and fully representing their Egypt.
Yes.
They must be reading their identity, from where you are, to whom you belong. It's not a religious issue, it's not a local issue, it's something global. It's now in Egypt, Belgium, France, United States, Germany, everywhere you find terrorism. So we need more engagement with international cooperation. We need more regulations, security regulations, to protect everyone, not only the church or the mosques. Surely, as I predict, and I hope it will not happen, that they will try to make it after a while in mosques, after a while in Eid for Muslims, in another situation or another event for Christians, these kind to play on firing the religious war.
Yes, definitely. Well, yeah, go ahead.
We must know, and the Christians, Muslims, everyone, even who is not believe in God, that we respect his right and we are protecting his humanity as a part of us. People must be more tolerant.
Yes.
We are in need for more solidarity and united with work, with business, with entrepreneurs, with knowledge. It needs like a revolution of knowledge for people. This, we need media to work on it. We need people to work on the ground. You need community leaders who are qualified to work with it during the universities, schools, everywhere, the rural areas. So this kind of actions, positive actions, it will rebuild and raise their nationality and their identity, that they are part of the society. There are no gap between the government and the people, and after that blaming by blah 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 and all of these crimes. All of us who are paying the penalty of any shortage or mistake.
Yes.
We still have time, but it's a very critical time. They are now targeting the security of Egypt, while the tourism started to get back.
Yes.
So it's attacking the economy, it's attacking the security, it's attacking the national security of Egypt, it's firing between not only Christians and Muslims, but even global, because now all of the world are having the same point of view. Terrorism, religiophobia everywhere. So we need to do more efforts to save our lives, and we have no choice.
Yes, definitely.
We have no choice to step back or any kind of more depression.
Yes. Dr. Al-Halim, now, the reason why a lot of people chose President Sisi is because of his security and intelligence background that they believe is very critical at this time. And definitely the security apparatuses, the Ministry of Interior, the armed forces, the intelligence, they really stopped a lot of attacks that maybe we don't even know of, and they foiled a lot of plans that were revealed or maybe not revealed yet. But now we are still dealing with a lot of terrorism in northern Sinai, and we're combating them. And now we're dealing with combating terrorism at the heart of the nation, in the capital, Cairo. Do you feel that we still need to do a whole lot more? Do you feel that we need to rethink or develop or change our security approach to tackle with such attacks and maybe future attacks as well?
Right. Absolutely right. The fact that apart from the educational and instructional learning about, changing the minds and the rules and the organizational, educational aspects of the youngsters, apart from all these cultural attitudes, actually, I'd like to focus the zoom of the camera on one fundamental issue, which is criminology and penology, actually. Criminology and penology, crime and the penalty. Now we have got a certain crime, and the crime seems to be very much dire. The price that is to be paid is very much dear, very much expensive one indeed, which is man's own life. As such, we would have to maximize the sort of the penalty. That's why I would seek, I would induce all the distinctive parliamentary figures of our own, our representative figures, actually, to try to change the law of the criminal, attitudes, and they change the criminal law impact so much so that it may be very much equal to what you might call the sort of the crime that is to be perpetrated. You still remember, the case of Adel Habbara, actually. The terrorist that did
Is it related? Is this, do you feel that such an attack is maybe a response to the verdict, the sentence that was passed on him?
Well, I would like to say that the postponing, actually, of the judgment and the verdict on the criminals of the sort, of the kind Adel Habbara is, and those Mahmoud Shafi and all the other figures are, would seem, I have no any sort of comment on the judiciary. I'm not giving my own final commentary on the final verdict on the part of all those venerable judges. But what I would like to draw the attention to is to try to, change the sort of the weakness through the aid of which all these verdicts are to be given. I see why it would take actually for about 3 years to give your own final verdict on Adel Habara from Abu Ghbir Sharqiya. The man who was very much witnessed and very much picked up as a criminal. In criminology and penology would say that confession is very much proof of doing the actions. You know.
So well, Dr. Al-Hayim, you mentioned the fact that actually Mahmoud Shafiq, we are running out of time, but one final question. Mahmoud Shafiq was actually arrested a few years ago.
Yes, before.
And now he was let go, and now we paid the price for his release.
Yeah.
How do you explain that? Did he have a good lawyer? Is it a judiciary decision? How do you explain this?
Well, I'm not calling actually for what you might call a military law. All what we would see to be very much in very bad need for is just changing the bands and the canons of the law, just by way of putting an end for all these terrorist acts, try to put the final verdict for all those criminals and all those terrorists, you know, I mean, as soon as possible, just by way of finalizing the whole thing, as much as it is indeed the case represented by, you know, Mahmoud Shafiq.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. This incident really is testing the resolve and the unity of the Egyptian people. And once again, the Egyptian people will foil any attempt for divisions. Before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished guest, Dr. Muhammad Al-Halim, the political analyst. I'd like to thank very much as well Dr. Ahmed Osama Abu Duma, member of the Global Board of Trustees of the United Religious Initiative. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.